All right, let me go to Professor Femi Odekunle. There's a question to you. It says, after making that fantastic speech, what should we do about corruption, fighting back in Nigeria? How do we tackle this issue of corruption? Because you talked effectively about having systems that are executed to its very last spirit. How do we now take it back, as it were, and fight back corruption? What would you suggest is the way forward, the call to action we need to take today? Professor Femi Odekunle, that question is for you.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Now, as I pointed out, it is difficult to rely on the political class because they are the beneficiaries of this corrupt, destructive system. Either we have inherited or we have put on ourselves since we have been having a constitution. Again, we cannot rely on the middle class because the middle class either believe they are beneficiaries or it will be their turn to get to that level whereby they will joining the exploiting class. Okay. Now, in our different ways, for example, now as a lecturer, I used to pick the conscience of my students. I used to pick the conscience of the people when I give public lectures, whether on television, whether in halls or whatever, about awareness of the dangers of corruption and what it will do and what people need to do to avoid it. That is one way. We take, for example, you have heard of the story of a captain of a class in a primary school who went home and came with a bag of sweets. And when the mother asked, "Where did you get it?" He said, "Well, I'm the captain of the class. And all those who came late gave me sweets so that I will not write their name down." The mother took action by taking the child back to school and embarrassed the child. Now, in our little ways, we can. But on the whole, I'm sorry to say this, I'm looking forward to a situation whereby a number of good people will arise and be able to mobilize the population to demand good governance, to demand actions against corruption. And I really, about 4 or 5 years ago, I was so angry with the labor union, even with ASU, that all they talk about is increment in their salary or their welfare. Why is it that the old of the labor union, NSC, cannot go and block exercising their rights according to the Constitution, go to the National Assembly and occupy and sleep over to say, unless you change this law, unless you do A, unless you do B, we are not going to leave. But like somebody says, Nigerians, they like to go to heaven, but forgetting that you have to die to go to heaven. And what they are, so, and the people who are organized, not somebody like me or somebody like Kadaria or whoever, that it is important that in our own little ways we influence. But at the end of the day, we have to rely on organized groups like the Nigerian Labour Congress, like the National Association of Students. Now, there's a point I want to make before I hand over the thing to you. Particularly my sister, because Uncle Briggs is one of the people I respect in the country in terms of their views, except the one that attaches to the Niger Delta. But in terms of our political position, I regard and I believe that when I was in detention 97, 98, when I was being tried for coup plotting, she was one of the few people on the left who was praying for me. So that is an assumption. But I want to say, take Asari Dokubo, who said that the problem in the NNDC is simply a pickpocket and we should ignore that. That kind of thinking does not help. And I want to link up that to the position of Uncle Briggs today. And I want to tell her that if South-South becomes an independent state today, independent nation, unfettered by Nigeria, she will find the problem of corruption and therefore lack of development in that enclave called South South. I'm sure of that, because you should realize that all the leaders there are similar to the leaders in the Northwest, the Northeast, the Southwest. They eat together, their children marry together, they overlook the deviance of one another. And that's why I think, because that woman, she's very educated, very literate, very conscious. And it pains me when she narrows the matter to a South-South situation, forgetting that if that place becomes independent today, the same problems of the Nigerian state, of the Nigerian nation, in quote, is going to be experienced that one. Whereas it should be around what I talked about. The interest of the collective must be the principle that overrides that of the individual. Wherever that is okay, that society will work, whether it's a state or a nation. Thank you.
Okay, okay, Prof. Let us not forget that in our conversation, she did make the point that we must agree that states must take responsibility for running their states. So I think there's also the element of your conversation in between that as well. Time, let me quickly go over to another question that is knowing at the conversation of today with regards to the issue you just raised. You gave us this powerful illustration of a mother who took her son back to school for collecting what is otherwise is what it is, bribe. He collected sweets in bribe from stopping himself from administering proper punishment to persons who came late, which is the book of the rule book. It's what the rule book states. And for the young man to be doing that at that young age, and the children understood that what they were doing too was definitely buying favor. The mother went back home, took her son, and went to the school to re-emphasize a point, which is this is stealing, this is corruption, this is bribery, it is not tolerated in our home. So like you noted, and Kadraya perfectly stated earlier on, that little drops of water makes an ocean. So every Nigerian must start the change with himself or herself. And that goes back to asking each and every one of us, when we see our own brothers and sisters who are involved in corrupt practices, in runs, in Dabo and things like that, do we hail them? Do we clap for them? Do we say, now your turn to chop the money? So in our conversations, like you just rightly pointed out, it is clear that if we do not consciously internalize how we, in smaller ways, say we tick it, the boxes, as something good to continue in perpetuating acts of bribery and corruption and lying and stealing in smaller ways, it becomes bigger because the collective number of those practicing the same habits becomes a ripple effect. So thank you for that story, story you gave to us, that anecdote. We love it. It is quite powerful. And I hope we can all take this and run with it as well. Then quickly, let me look at another question with regards to Ankyo Briggs this time around. Someone is asking a very direct question. He wants to know that by your rating in the 4 years that Jonathan was put as president, did he really run well as a president? Did he do well for the 4 years he also ran the mantle under his president? On 4 years he was president, in addition to the 2 years he was president after his principal actually passed on. Can you quickly respond to that? Because I think it's in response to the fact that you overemphasized that point earlier on to drive home your point. Ms. Ankyo Briggs, please.
All right. First of all, because both what Prof said and this question are more in line with each other, I think let me quickly address the one of Prof. I thank him for his opinion of me, which is I'm grateful for, but because it speaks more of who I am than not. But that is not really totally who I am. I want it to be understood that I grew up in the Niger Delta creeks before oil was claimed to have been found in commercial quantity, and I know the impression that we were given as a people as what oil is supposed to achieve for us in our lives. Now, I have found that to be a lie based on what I was told and what I still remember by the oil companies when they came to show us a film of what life would be like. But that's a fact. Now, on the other hand, I think that Prof will also know, since he seems to have drawn that impression of me, that my original thinking for a very long time, I've been in activism since 1998, and I didn't really start by just shouting, if we can't live together, we must live apart. No, I was offended by what happened in the devastation of the Niger Delta. The devastation of the Niger Delta was not done by my people. When the devastation started, when Ken Sarawiwa was killed, when Adakaboro came up and started talking about the devastation, it was a combination of irresponsible government, allowing the oil companies to do what they dare not do in America, in Texas, where there is oil. So I have developed this attitude and this position over some years ago. There is no country, if we say that because we know that Nigeria, the Niger Delta, I'm not saying only, I'm not the only person saying if we cannot live to it. Some people are outright saying, even the Afenifere, some part of Prof's people are also declared, I mean, some have declared independence even, you know, so that's not the point. It's always the last resort. For me, it is the last resort, but I'm definitely standing on my opinion and position that if my people are going to continue to suffer like this, where our oil is going to be taken away 100% and we're giving 13%, and somebody is coming to say, what have you done with the 13%? That's not governance. That's not responsibility. That's just downright looting. And how is it that all the oil allocation is being allocated to people outside of the Niger Delta? So we can go on. And I said also in my presentation that we have to find a solution. What is the solution? We're talking about the problem. Let's begin to look at the solution. The lecturer said the constitution. I agree totally. That constitution is not by us. How do we throw it away? We have the 214 conference report. Nobody's looking at it. Somebody said, I'm not even going to look at it, and that's it. Now, coming to the issue of Jonathan's year. Jonathan served from 2010 to 2011. It was not 2 years, it was 1 year. And then he was elected for 4 years. Now, when you say, many people say, what did Jonathan do for his people? And that was where I was coming from. The question is, everybody says, hey, he was there. Why didn't he fix this? He was there. Why didn't he fix that? That's why I use the example of the East-West Road. East-West Road is not the only problem that we have in the Niger Delta. Now, going to what the question now said, if I think he has done well. Under the circumstances, everything, the railway that is being talked about today, who built those things? And the issue of how we're now being told that China is now going to take part of Nigeria because people went and signed something they didn't read and all of that. What type of governance is that? Jonathan should be asked if he did well. I just highlighted the fact of what the people are saying he didn't do for the Niger Delta. But to be fair, Jonathan did his very best that he did. He did it for others. He didn't do for the Niger Delta region. And other people are actually saying that and blaming him for that. And finally, let me quickly say that I do not think that whether Jonathan did well or did not do well is the issue, because if you look at the number of people that have been killed since this government came, if you look at the how much money we have borrowed, if you look at the rate of the dollar to the naira, and you compare it to Jonathan's time, I don't know how people account for differences. But if you place those differences, you can see what era was better than the other. You cannot say, I will not say, let us put it like that, that this government is better than Jonathan's government. No, I cannot say that. Every government has this issue with corruption, but the corruption we're seeing today, is that the worst corruption? No, it is not. NDDC is it's an agency that was created for the Niger Delta region. and it started at a particular time. And believe you me, if they are not afraid, let the government release the list of people that have been given jobs in Niger Delta through the commission. You will find that the names will go outside of the Niger Delta region. I am not, I have condemned my people. I have said on the Niger Delta issue, corruption issue, that it must be investigated all the way back. And even if my father is found to have been involved in the looting, or me and Kubrick, I should be made to pay. So the thing is that if we don't tell ourselves the truth of how we're going to fix Nigeria, and we keep looking for who to blame all the time, then we won't get anywhere. I don't think Jonathan will be the president of Nigeria again. If he does, I won't even support it. So what I'm saying, therefore, is that the issue is we must make changes. And what are those changes that we're prepared to make? I believe that people, states, should have their autonomy, not freedom or whatever, but autonomy to run their state. See, if my governor does not run my state well, it's my responsibility to hold him accountable. But when the federal government is claiming that it is overseeing, I mean, did we vote for a president to fix Rivers State? No, that's not federalism. Federalism is that the governor, look at what's happening in America. You know, the argument going backwards and forward, and the resistance that Donald Trump is having from the governor. That's federalism. And that's what we should have in Nigeria. And we cannot discount the fact that people are different people. I was a little bit shaken when Prof said, the lecturer said, that he cannot even relate to his state. That's sad for me, but that's for me, but it works for him.
All right.
So that's all.
Thank you
I've never
so
lived outside of my state. I have no desire to live outside of my state.
All right. So I'm going to take some comments quickly from our audience. I have this one from Olakunle Jayesimi, and it says that to check the Ondokare Fuyemi, that's the name. Ondokare Fuyemi says, my suggestion, to check the default of the federal character system, laws should be put in place to sanction the departments that default in the implementation of the federal character system. Those in charge of employment should be prosecuted if they default in the implementation of the federal character system. Ondokare, are you also buying into what Professor Femi said earlier on with regards to what China implements as well, with regards to if you're at the top of the hierarchy of government, you get dealt with 1 week and you are finished. But if you are of the lower cadre, you are put into a welfare kind of system where you have to rehabilitate yourself, because the higher you are, the more that is demanded of you. All right, then let's go to these other points that have also been made by others. Olakunle Jayesimi says, this point is valid, that tribalism is not itself divisive. It is a recognition of the values and culture provided by individual tribes. It is also a fact that Nigeria must not successfully evolve as a unifying culture, that Nigeria has not successfully evolved a unifying culture, a single national identity, which is important to strive for. We currently pretend to have the identity imparted by colonial minds while we continue with our individual tribal lives while being addressed as Nigerians. There is therefore the need to evolve a national identity without which, even on that front, Nigeria is yet to become a truly united nation. I think national integration refers to this unifying national identity. The question then becomes, how do we deliberately evolve such an identity? And it's a very powerful question. So I'm going to direct this specifically to our Prof Abubu to respond to this. Prof, how do you respond to how we can evolve a national identity? Because we keep talking about patriotism, the need for it, but how do we develop it conscientiously, consciously, as a lifestyle, like Olakunle Jayesimi is suggesting, so that it becomes something we own and we run with it? It's not something we think and start analyzing, but it's a default response to have like a typical identity, a Nigerian identity that taps into the Nigerian dream or the Nigerian project. Professor Abubu, please could you respond to that?
Yeah, I think basically I still have to look at the issue of leadership. If you have a truly detribalized leader, that leader can actually coalesce the entire country by coming up with endeavors that attract every community. Now, what our leaders have been doing, primarily it's based on ethnicity. Just try to favor one ethnic group versus the other. But at the center, if you have programs, irrespective of where you come from, let everyone chip in and make policies that, in essence, can affect everybody. You try to do it with special interest groups. Make sure we have effective rule and law. Let the laws be there, regardless of who opposite God, as long as we have a true law and order that affects everyone. No one should be protected because of their status. Someone was talking about China. We don't need a law for two different strata. Let the law be applicable to everyone, and we have a leader that can demonstrate, yes, regardless of where I come from, I have the interest of everybody at heart.
Okay, let's go over to Cyril Uchenna Guam. For socio-economic development of Nigeria, power must be devolved to the federating units. The federal should handle only 3 issues: foreign policy and international relations, national security, and currency. Any state not viable should merge with a more viable state after due referendum between requesting and accepting states. The part-time federal unitary legislature will sit once a month at 20,000 per month. Now, Professor Femi Odekunle, would you respond to that, please? Because the issues here are quite in your forte. So can you respond to these points that Cyril Uchenna has just read? Talking about 20,000 naira per month to the federal unitary legislature, and then saying that all the creation of states that we have done all over the years, it is clear that some are not thriving. So they should begin to think of merger. Now, he's also raising another very key important point, which is the terms of national security at the level of federal and currency at the level of federal. And that is the only thing that the federal should handle, while the other issues should begin, people in the state should begin to look at the reality on ground that some states are not quite sustainable and it's time to have a merger. What do you say to that, please, Professor Odekunle?
Hello?
I can hear you. Go ahead, please, sir.
Okay. You see, I want to say that there is a point there that first, but let me take the first part about this. Somebody who mentioned the Chinese situation. They say to whom much is given, what is expected. And there is a relationship between corruption, humongous corruption in high places, and corruption at the middle or lower level. As for the constitution, first of all, I believe there should be only a unicameral legislature. All these legislatures all over the place, they are unnecessary and corrupt or legalized drainage on our resources. Okay. Secondly, I think anybody who wants to go into public office should be able to feed themselves and take care of their basic essence and just get a salary like a civil servant or somebody who works in the bank or whatever. There are many things that are humongously wrong in our system. For example, and the more I talk about it, the more I get angry, and I don't want to have hypertension. Now, for example, we are all graduates, we are all Nigerians. How come that somebody who works in NNPC and somebody who works in CBN, they get about 10 times the salary of somebody who works in the public service, and yet you expect the best from them? How come people who work in the customs or CBN or NNPC or wherever, they get more than they get twice the salary of a professor, and you expect the professors to give you the best? So we can go on and on. So definitely, if you want the best for governance, there is a need to drastically cut down the allowances of legislators. There is a need. You know, when Obasanjo said, okay, there should be no caste anymore, you know what they did? They now said, well, every committee needs a car. And there are 6 members in the committee or 12 members. They will say there's a pool car, so they will buy 12 cars, which they give to themselves. All those nooks and corners, all those nuances should be dealt with by a president, a leader that has his powers to deal with it. And again, remember when I talked about devolution. I want Nigeria to be one, because I think we are better off if our country remains big as it is, remains well populated, and the resources are put together. So I'm not for breakage or balkanization. Now, but there must be devolution of powers. I remember up to 20 years ago, my argument in the paper I wrote was that there should be a president. Then there should be vice presidents, and you give them responsible and accountable positions. You can say, okay, the president is in charge of security, military, and police. You can say the vice president, I'm just saying, there are many ways of doing it. You can say the vice president is in charge of CBN and other revenue agencies. And you can say a prime minister is in charge of the ministries and the parastatals. There are ways of doing that, rather than this concentration of power in the hands of one person, whereby a director who has never seen the Abuja before gets a letter to say your appointment has been approved by the president. Then you have been removed by the president, and so on and so forth. Why is it not possible that this power of the president is put down in a way that a vice president who will not be from the same zone as the president, a prime minister who will not be from the same zone as those, and they will have definitive areas of responsibility for which they are accountable to the population. And then you have a national assembly that is unicameral and that sits like in Botswana only when due. Not these 24 hours, 365 days a year, and they don't work for 24 hours. They start meeting at 12 or 2 o'clock, and they are always on recess for all kinds of things. Even if one of them is put in jail, they will take a recess to go and greet him in Kuje prison. So that is my response, that powers must be devolved. And I emphasize also the matter of socioeconomic structuring. There is no